Today we're going to talk about Trump's last-ditch strategy to get out of his impending indictments and whether it'll backfire on him. And I interviewed the liberal candidate for the Wisconsin Supreme Court election, Janet Protasiewicz, about what's at stake in this upcoming race as far as abortion rights and fair maps are concerned. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. So we're still in a holding pattern as far as Trump's impending indictments are concerned. I think the whole world expected them to be handed down last week in the Manhattan DA's case, owed largely to the fact that Trump himself had taken to Truth Social to announce that he would be arrested last Tuesday. Now, obviously, that didn't happen, but still, it's expected to happen any day now. To keep on top of that legal news as it breaks, make sure to subscribe to this channel and check out the legal breakdown series I do with Glenn Kirshner. But I want to focus now on this last-ditch effort by Trump to try and stave off this accountability. And so the guy currently awaiting indictment in one case regarding inciting violence has now decided to try and dissuade prosecution by inciting more violence. Like, perfect plan, can't imagine what could possibly go wrong. And so there have been a few steps that Trump has taken here, all progressively more aggressive than the last. So he started with some posts on Truth Social where he would say stuff like, the far and away leading Republican candidate and former president of the United States of America will be arrested on Tuesday of next week. Protest, take our nation back. And we must save America, protest, protest, protest. And all of this is certainly evocative of his pre-January 6th tweet where he said, big protest in D.C., be there, will be wild. But then he took it a step further. He posted again, this time directed to the NYPD. He wrote, can you imagine the great New York City Police Department having to defend and protect the defunders and cop haters of the radical left that want to put their greatest champion and friend in prison for a crime that doesn't exist? With the intent, obviously, being that Trump is trying to get the police to defend not the law, but him. Like, to tell the police that the left shouldn't have the benefit of protection, thanks to the cops, only the right, coming at you straight from the guy who leads the Law and Order party. And those appeals were bad enough unto themselves. Like, I don't think I have to understate the danger of the fucking former president of the United States telling the cops that right-wing violence is okay because it would be against the left. And the fact that we will tend to move beyond this without a second thought really does show how far the Overton window has shifted, that we consider this just another Tuesday in this country. But I guess that makes sense when you consider that the next moves by Trump were to post a photo of him holding a baseball bat in a side-by-side next to Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, followed by another post where he wrote, what kind of person can charge another person, in this case a former president of the United States, who got more votes than any sitting president in history and leading candidate by far for the Republican Party nomination, with a crime when it is known by all that no crime has been committed, and also known that potential death and destruction in such a false charge could be catastrophic for our country. And so it doesn't take much to figure out what he's trying to do here by saying that there will potentially be death and destruction if he's indicted. Like, all of this is a wink and a nod to his supporters. And this isn't discreet, right? This isn't exactly the most coded message that he's ever sent. He's effectively telling his supporters that should he be indicted, it would be a real shame if some death and destruction were to happen. I'm not saying that it should. I'm just saying that it would be a real shame if something were to happen. But of course, Trump did use the word potential because clearly he thinks that throwing in that one qualifier will shield him from any and all accountability if and when his supporters do descend on New York to cause death and destruction. And so because he threw in that one word, he thinks he'll be covered from all liability. Basically, he can save himself on some technicality here, trying to give himself just enough cover so that he can very obviously get his message across to his supporters while still maintaining some degree of plausible deniability here. And so he gets to be all slick while still getting the murderous mob that he's looking for. And so that's one part of this, that you've got the guy leading one of the two major political parties in this country who is openly, yet again, trying to incite a mob to violence. But the other part is what kind of an impact all of this will have politically. And Trump and his mouthpieces are, of course, wish-casting that any impending indictment will only make him stronger. And I'm sitting here racking my brain about the ways in which that could be true, and I just don't see a planet on which it is. Like, will it invigorate the people who already support him and who are already conditioned to feel like any accountability for a conservative is just witch hunting? Sure. But those people are already going to vote for Trump. And that's the thing. The people who are in a position to be influenced by his pity party are already Trump supporters. They're the base. The question is whether soft R's or independents will look at a guy who's been indicted for, campaign finance violations or trying to overthrow the last election and think to themselves, I was on the fence, but now that I saw that a jury of this guy's peers found enough evidence against him to vote for indictment, he's my guy. I just don't think that that's the case. At best, an indictment will have no impact, but I don't think there's a planet on which this could possibly help him. And he knows that. That's why he's railing so hard against this. If he truly thought that any of this would redound to his benefit, he wouldn't be stoking a fucking mob to try and pressure prosecutors into bailing. He knows that this will only hurt his chances of keeping power, which is quite literally the only thing he cares about. Sometimes the right answer is the simplest one, and in this case, it doesn't get much simpler than recognizing that none of what's happening will help Trump, and that is something that he is acutely aware of. Here's a preview of my interview with Janet Protasiewicz. What's the state of the maps in Wisconsin right now?
Well, right now we have amongst the most gerrymandered maps in the entire country. And I've told people I don't think you can sell to anybody that our maps are fair. They are gerrymandered to the point that I think they would really defy reason and defy logic. So we're dealing with amongst the most gerrymandered maps you can imagine.
Now, is there any likelihood of a challenge to these maps coming before the court? Like, are there any cases making their way through the courts right now?
Not that I'm aware of. And so here's the situation. I think that if the court elects a new Supreme Court justice on April 4th, whose name might be Judge Janet, I would be certainly very, very open to revisiting the maps. I've got to be careful, what I say about, particular types of issues. Obviously, every decision has to be rooted in the law, and I have to be fair and impartial. But one of the main reasons I got into this race is because of the threat to our democracy, the utter threat that our very gerrymandered maps have, right, and people's ability to vote and have their vote counted.
Can you give like a brief overview of the electoral situation looks like in Wisconsin right now in terms of what the breakdown of the state is versus the makeup of the legislature and the congressional delegation?
Sure. So, Wisconsin's a battleground state. We have very, very close statewide elections. Our Governor Evers, won re-election by about 3%. But we elected on that same ballot a Republican United States Senator. We elected a Democrat as an Attorney General. We elected a Republican for our state treasurer. So it tells you that we have these very, very close elections. We're a battleground state. But then you take a look at our legislature, and virtually 2/3 of the seats in both the House and the Senate are red. And you say to yourself, how can that possibly be fair? And then you look at the fact that we have 8 congressional seats. We have a delegation of 8. 6 of those seats are red and 2 are blue. So the numbers are askew. Our legislature doesn't get anything done. When you have these very, very non-competitive seats, it certainly engenders more and more partisanship. There's no need to work across the aisle. There's no need to compromise. So I would argue that what's happening with these gerrymandered seats is really a threat to our democracy.
And in fact, building on that, far from engendering any type of bipartisanship, this is actually facilitating more extremism, because those are the only people now, because those districts are already preordained in terms of who the elected officials are going to be. You're just really trying to win a primary at that point and not trying to come together at the end of it. To check out the full interview with Janet Protasiewicz, click the thumbnail right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. I've also started a Spanish channel, so if you want to support my efforts to reach the Spanish-speaking community, make sure to subscribe to that. The link is right here on the screen as well. And finally, to see more of my content in English, the subscribe button for this channel is also on the screen.